of life's greatest questions is what happens to us after we die. Is death the end or a new beginning? Welcome to the Round Trip Death Podcast. In this show, we listen to firsthand accounts of people who have been clinically dead and return to talk about it. All right, so we are here today. We're talking with Teresa, way down under in New Zealand. And Teresa, how you doing today?
I'm good. Yep, good to be here.
Good. Well, it's been good talking to you prior to this and getting an idea of your life and what it's like in New Zealand, and to take things a little bit out of order. So you've had a near-death experience, or as we call them around here, round trip death, because actually a near-death experience could be, hey, I was on the freeway today, somebody cut me off, I almost got in a wreck. Gee, I felt like I was near death. Well, we talked more about people who have actually had an experience where they did die, had an experience, and then came back to talk about it. And so we call that a round trip death. It just seems a little bit more clarifying and
more fitting
and specific. And I would love you to start over and just give me a little 2 or 3 minutes sort of.
So in 2014, I hemorrhaged. I was at home in my kitchen, and it was actually 11 p.m. at night, and I could feel myself, starting to get weak, and knew that I was going to pass out. So I rang my friend who lived 5 minutes down the road, and she came to my rescue, and I got it. It was very hard because I was up against the kitchen floor and I could see the blood everywhere. And I had the kids were in bed, and so that was keeping, it was like, I can't go, I believed I was going to die. But my thoughts weren't about that or freaking out about that. It was just about like trying to stay there until my friend walked in the door, and she comes bounding through the door with this big smile actually, and like she looked at the blood and then she looked at me, and I knew she was trying to put me at ease. And I said to her, I think I'm going to pass out. And she was like, yep, away you go. And that
See
was
ya.
it. Yep. And then I as I was obviously coming to there, I could hear like these voices, and they turned out to be 3 beings. I couldn't hear them as in how you would talk vocally with a human. It was different, like in your head. And I told them that I couldn't understand them. At that point, I couldn't see them. And then like the 3 sort of shadows came forward, and then I saw these 3 beings. 2 were elevated above the other one. I'm not saying they were levitating, but they were really, really tall and had cloaks on. They were a maroon color cloak. The other one was smaller. I feel like the 2 taller ones they had a masculine vibe actually, and the other one I've always believed was more feminine. And one of the males, more masculine ones, said, "We're not talking to you, we're talking about you." And it didn't offend me. Like you probably think you'd be offended by that. And I actually was just like, oh, well, they're nice. And because that environment is, like if I could go every day and come back, I would. If I could just jump ship and go to and from every day, I'd get up earlier just to do it.
Do you mind if I back you up a little bit at this point and let's get a little bit of background as to what was going on with you? And you don't have to give us details on medical history, but tell us what was going on that led up to this.
So I actually had a hemorrhage, but it happened 3 nights. The major event was the 3rd night. I'd gone to hospital bleeding, and they actually told me, sorry to the guys out there, but that this was a woman issue, like a monthly woman issue. And I was like, no, it's not. And fortunately, that same doctor wasn't on the 3rd night. And so, so I hemorrhaged, and there's no known cause for it. So they, did the operation to see if they could find anything. They couldn't find anything. I mean, originally they were trying to see if I was perhaps having a miscarriage, or there's no scientific explanation or medical explanation for it. So I just lost a lot of blood, and I had a unit of blood obviously immediately. Well, when they could eventually get to my veins, they had to go in through my foot. And then I think all up I had about 5 units of blood over the time I was in critical care. And I tell you what, it was a struggle, like, because I came back, and when I came back I was angry because I'd been asking, I saw beings, and so I wanted to stay, but I didn't because of my children, and but I did beg them to let me stay a bit longer, and they didn't. And it took me about a week. Like, I was not just angry, I was furious with them for, I don't really know why. I just wanted to stay that bit longer, because there's nothing on earth that would describe that. If I could go again in a heartbeat and come back.
Let's go back to the beginning of this. So were you in the hospital when this happened, or was this before, when your friend came over? When were you?
I was, I arrived back, and when I came back, I was in the ambulance.
So this was at home.
Yeah, this was
lost blood,
at home.
Passed out. We assume died in some way. What was the first thing that you remember? What happened the very first?
It was just, I just was in a place that was physically looked like a earthy, I call it like a cave-like environment. It was, the feeling though was really at peace. Like, there's no peace like that. And then I heard these voices, and I hate having to say this, it's ridiculous, but they sounded like Alvin and the Chipmunks. And it's not like you and I talking. It's not like that. It's like it's in your head. And I said, I was sort of listening for a bit, and I'm like, what is this? And I couldn't really see anything other than even visually it's different. It's quite hard to explain really in words. But I eventually said, I can't understand you. And I knew there were 3 voices, and then I saw these beings. They were really tall, like really tall, long, lanky arms with a robe-like thing on, but their faces, like they had they had faces, but they didn't. I don't know quite how to describe that. My focus wasn't to their face. It was quite like, that they were there.
So you knew you were out of your body. Some people talk about seeing their body and going towards a tunnel or something. You didn't see any of that, okay? But you knew you were somewhere.
I knew I was somewhere, but I was just, I didn't even think like I've crossed over. That didn't even occur to me. I was just intrigued and like overwhelmed with how cool it was. Like, it felt awesome. Whatever you feel at peace. And so I just ran with that. And and when I said to them, I can't understand you, one of them said, we're not talking about you. I mean, we're not talking to you, we're talking about you. And I just accepted it. It was like, oh well, then I'll just kick back here. And it was like, and then I all of a sudden a lesson, I guess, on how trivial people can be and petty and day-to-day things that will get worked up over. It's not even worth it. It's silly. And it made me laugh. I laughed at us actually for how silly we can be in life in general. And then so it was like in the background I could sort of hear them disputing, and like I said to my friend later, I said it's like that with the combination of when I all of a sudden I must have at some point decided to just stay because it was so nice, and then I actually swore, and so I didn't get in trouble for that. I said that and then the F word, I can't because I've got children, And then it was like, whoa, and I could feel this G-force, and that's when I was like, in the fight for my life, trying to beg them to let me stay, and they wouldn't. And then I've found over time that, I think I learned a lot more there than what I remembered initially coming back. And then it's like every time there's a situation that's relevant to things I've learned there, the answer's just clear, or my understanding will just be there. She just said, look, you're not the granddaughter that you were. That's a bit harsh, but I mean, not on her behalf, but it's true. And people say I'm quite cutthroat. Like, if someone's being petty or like, yeah, I've got a friend that holds grudges really bad. And Nana heard me saying it too, and I was like, because the person had got themselves wound up about something, and I said, look, that God's sake, the person you're so wound up about over for the last like 3 months or so is out there living your life. You don't even see them, have any contact, and you're still like, it affects you on a daily thing. And I was like, at some point you've got to like let that go. I think I learned that when we behave like that, it's self-harm. And I can get quite passionate trying to express that, but only, because they don't understand me. And so I think that's why these things are important, so that families can understand that someone like me can say things sometimes, or even in lesser, but I mean it. I can be quite cutthroat. Like if someone's going to behave stupidly, I'm like, I'm not, nah. We're not doing that. Like, it's okay to agree to disagree and things like that without letting your ego take over. And I think I learned a lot about ego and judgment.
Let's go back, if you can fill in some more details about what happened when you felt like you were outside of your body. What else can you tell us about it, and about the three beings that were there?
Oh, they were, I would say, like when they said they're not talking to me, they're talking about me. That's the sort of thing that can be probably quite offensive in general. But I didn't take it that way. These beings whoever they are, very pure, like really innocent. There's no bad in them. There's nothing. They're very, I would say, quite black and white. There's probably no gray area. Very matter of fact, but very, very compassionate beings. Yeah.
Were they talking out loud?
It's hard to explain, because it's not like you and me having a conversation where you can hear them. It's more like you. When I first heard them and said, I can't understand you, I could sort of hear them, I guess, more relative to as we can hear each other. But then from there, it's like it's just in your head. It's quite hard to explain. I don't quite know how to put that into words. Okay. But you are communicating with them. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that there's places in between, like that was, I don't believe that was heaven. I believe that was a middle ground, or a place of decisions, or something like that. I'm not really quite sure.
How long do you think you were there? What did it feel like?
Oh, I thought that I was there for at least 4 or 5 hours. That's how it felt to me, I guess. But time's not real. If that makes sense.
It was only a few minutes in our time here, but you felt like you were there a long time. What else was there more that happened? I mean, that's a lot of time.
No, I just think I did learn. yeah, so with Nana, she asked me one day what I believed about heaven and hell. Like, would God send a good person to hell? And I contemplated it, and I said, yeah, I was like, well, he might send me to hell. And I said, so for example, if I got sent to hell, then I believe it is under God's protection, and it's because he's at his last end with you. There's something you've not learned or gotten over, or like might be holding on to. It's like the friend of mine that's really holds on to stuff, like very egotistical, but a good person. And I've said, for God's sake, like, because this person does actually believe you do go somewhere, I'm like, God, I worry about you. Like, if you would just let things go, you've got more of a chance, because if you keep this behavior up, you're more likely to go down there, like, until you get over yourself, type thing. Like, but I wouldn't want people to think that you, just because you had a grudge with someone, but that I'm just using that as an example. If you were going to, and in general you're a good person, I believe that there's a damn good reason for it, but you would be under his protection, is what I believe.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
His or hers or whatever, like, I've got friends that call God source and stuff like that. That doesn't matter. And I would say to anyone that's had an experience or not, somebody that has, I would find it hard that they would fall into a debate over that. I think you would accept that. Yeah, I've found that since the experience that there has, it's almost like a detachment between myself and others, and that I'm able to accept what you can't accept a lot easier. For example, if someone was horrible or whatever and did something that was very unjustified, it's normal for people to go and have a bit of a shindig about it and express their feelings to their friends, and often will do that rather than dealing with the problem. Whereas, and when it's happened to me, I've had a friend on a situation say, how can you not be so angry? And I was like, it's done, it's their problem. Like, what they do onto you is I treat it like it's not my business. It will get taken care of, and it always does.
You mentioned how peaceful it felt where you were.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that? And then that, I think that relates to what you're saying right now about how you deal with people now.
Oh, it's so peaceful. Like, if I could, like, oh, my friends would teasing me because I was like, if I could just like touch you and share that feeling with you, it's the peacefulness is just like, honestly, I don't know, that it's beyond what you'd experience on earth.
Do you still feel that sometimes, or is it just kind of impossible here?
No, but you can feel a connection, like, and I make sure that I do feel that at some point every day, or a lot of the day. Sometimes I fail, but that's okay. But I think it's important. I've learned, well, when I came back, it felt like I was an alien dressed in a human suit on a body, or on a planet I no longer belonged.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's like you could be around 1,000 people and you just don't feel like, well, I didn't feel like I was human. I just didn't fit. So I felt like an alien, sort of,
Well, and you mentioned that you didn't really, well, because of your kids, you wanted to come back, but not for a while, right? So that kind of ticked you off. So how did that carry over?
Well, like, I was quite angry. It was just because it felt so good. I just wanted to have that bit more time there, and I probably wanted to be asking questions and stuff. But yeah, I think when I first came back, it was really weird. Like it was, I don't even know. I think I just felt very detached.
So did you
Very
talk to
detached.
anybody
And
about it? Was there
yeah,
anybody that could understand and kind of relate to what you were going through?
No, people just thought I was mad. You could see, if I said to my friends, I lost a lot of friends and I withdrew, actually completely withdrew, like just apart from work, but other than that, I completely withdrew from people.
Why is that?
I just couldn't, like, I found myself, I'd be sitting around my friends and stuff, and that's fine. And and they'd be laughing at stuff that wasn't funny. And I just started to notice that in so many situations, people were horrible to each other. They're horrible to each other in the workplace, and like really petty, and any opportunity to backstab another person. And so it just got to, it was too much. It's like I was, like attacked from all angles at seeing a side of people I'd not really considered so much. Yeah.
You came back a different person.
Yeah. Yeah, totally different personality, they reckon. I sort of feel
How
like
about-
I've forgotten how I was. I just am now.
How about your family? Do they see this change?
Oh yeah, my my partner left me. It broke our relationship up. Yep. Because I would find that I'd be overrun with this energy, and I'd often be like this, like it was like a surge, like a surge would go through my body. And erratic, you can probably tell. I can jump from conversation to conversation really fast.
Speaking of that, you mentioned something in your summary here about issues with electronic devices ever since. And by the way, how long ago was this experience? 8 years ago?
In 2014, January 2014.
Yeah. So 8 years ago, how do you how do you deal with electronic devices now, and why?
Things started to get a bit better in 2020. Like it got to the point that my friends, myself, like I had to agree. Like Chloe, a good friend of mine, if I go to her place, well, she's in India at the moment, but if she was home and I went there, like it became like an automatic response. She'd get up and put her laptop away and put her phone away and like, don't touch my phone or
And why
don't
is
sit
that?
next to it. Because I remember one time I'd used her device for something I was just looking at the time or whatever. And then anyway, I got home and she rings me up and she's like, oh my God, man, what have you done? Like I've used her laptop and it just dies. It just stops working. And then she's like, with the phone this particular day, she's like, what did you do? And I was like, I just checked the time. And she was like, all my settings and everything have changed. And she said, and my Tinder, she goes, I was like, you're what? And she was like, my Tinder's got all these creepy men on it. I was like, I didn't open your phone. Like, so we'll do things like that. But for things to just stop functioning is what generally happens. They'll just shut down.
Give me another example, like cell phones.
Yep, the screen will just go blue and then it switches off.
And do they come back on or are they dead?
Yeah, they do, but it's like they're on delayed reaction, sort of. It's like they're suffering from a delayed reaction. And like I could be, say, on Facebook, and then all of a sudden my Gmail will open and it will start flashing like at the actual, I don't know, it's like it's warping or something. It's weird. So I still get that now. But that happens. It used to be I could only be on a device for about 15 minutes before that stuff would start carrying on. Now it's stretched out to about 2 hours before I generally start getting any bad behavior from it. Electricity, like, static electricity with cars, how you'll hop out of the car or go to shut it and you might get that wham. There's that. So much so that I'm actually in the habit of just lifting my foot up and shutting the door now. It's just habit. I just don't touch it with my hands.
You better be careful pumping the gas in your car.
Yeah, I don't like doing it. I always wear gum boots. I can get away with it because we're in the country. And so in little old New Zealand, if you rock into town in your gum boots and stuff, they just assume you're a farmer anyway. So that's okay.
What else has changed? Do you feel more perceptive about good, evil, positive, negative, anything like that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. First, I think it's important for people that have experienced this, that are feeling out of whack, is to ground yourself. Like I've got a wee bushwalk down the road, and I find I've always had good relationships with animals naturally. You know, like I grew up on a farm, and my horse, my pony, and my sheep Leamington, and my German Shepherd Basil. We'd all go off together, like it was just like a little family of friends. And same now, like with my horse and stuff. Like a lot of people are like, wow, man, that's like, he's like a well-trained dog. Like I can take him for a walk down the road without a halter or a lead rope. He'll just, you know, come along. I'm at ease with animals, but I'll go to the bush and just sit. And I notice that birds are very drawn to me since. I seem to have a thing with birds. Like I've had one just land on me and start eating my biscuit while I was sitting outside, and it'll be like, you know, or they'll come inside, and now like my partner or the kids will be like, Mum, there's a bird inside, you know, and I'm like, because normally it's just a mess and they go toilet in the house in fear, you know, and I'm like, oh, just everybody leave, we don't need your silly energy, you know. And I don't know, it's like we can communicate what way out, come on, out you go. And they don't panic, they just do this thing at me.
Why do you think this is? Is there something different about your
I think
energy?
there's an energy change. I think that it has to be something when you cross over, something changes. And it's energy of sorts. I don't know how to explain that. I wouldn't even know where to begin. But certainly I would say that my brain is my stomach. Everything's done by feel. It's like my emotional center is my brain. Like I feel the energy in my stomach. Yeah, physical feeling is associated with everything. Okay, yeah. So after the incident, prior to my experience, I was working for Harvey Norman. I don't know if you have Harvey Norman over there, but it's just an outlet store that sells TVs, you know, appliances and stuff like that. And then while in critical care, I had an overwhelming need, and I even questioned it to ask myself what this is about, to work in a rest home, and I'd never had that desire at all. And so when I left the hospital, before I even got home, I went straight to Harvey Norman and handed in my resignation. And then my friend went into where I ended up getting the job, and she went in and got the form. I didn't want to go in because I looked like not good. And then 2 weeks later, I started there. And I was day shift, and this particular nurse was night shift. And so we passed at handover. He was leaving, I was coming in, and as he walked past, I just got this real, you know, like this shudder, and like a form of a stench that you wouldn't, yeah, other people crossing him in the hallway wouldn't smell it. Like I don't know, that it was that horrible. He just reeked of evil. And and so then I noticed over a week that the staff were talking about this resident, and I was just like, what? And they weren't being nice about her. They were, they had his back. He obviously would complain about her, and that manipulated staff into believing him, because I noticed that a lot of them that worked there when I started have worked together for, 10 plus years, and they'd obviously gotten into some kind of a social status thing, and rather than looking after doing their job and actually considering whether there really was something wrong with the resident. They didn't. They just played his game with him. And, I walked into her room when I walked past her door, and it was like a week on, and it was like, I'm just going to go in and see who this woman is, and I opened the door straight, and I walked into an old lady crying, and I could, they shared en suites, and I could hear, and I asked her what was wrong, and she said, they're talking about me, but you won't believe me. And I was like, you so will. And I could hear idle chatter. And so I walked into the ensuite and just listened. And there was 2 care workers and a resident ragging on her. So she's had to listen to this for God knows how long. And so I called the staff members out, and I said, you've been sitting in handover every day knowing that what you're doing is in fact not her, it's you, and so that got their backs up, because who was I was new. So jump forward to 7 months down the track. It took a lot to get him, but I had a glass full of diazepam and lorazepam that were not prescribed to her, so she shouldn't have had those drugs. In New Zealand, the GP prescribes what drugs they get, and she didn't, and those are called DDs here on the charts. She wasn't prescribed DDs by her GP. There's absolutely no way she should have had them. I also noticed that there was a funny signature or type thing beside Betty's name on the drug charts, and it was only when he was on, but he was the only nurse on in her wing, and it didn't match his signature. And so, yeah, there were a few things that had him. There was no way out. But for 7 months, the way they treated her, and I feel like that was the desire of, she needed help. I think that was part of God's plan. And so I will run with that. And if I get an overwhelming desire to do something, I'll give it the grace, because, if I didn't listen to myself, then she'd be dead.
So what happened to the guy that smelled bad?
A monster got away with it, So
what did he do? What happened?
He wasn't doing anything like sexually to her. It was like a power abuse, because she was weak. And so he would pull her bed away from the wall, so she couldn't reach her bell, and like she'd wet her bed, and then he'd tell her off. And
so just abuse in other ways.
Just abuse. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
and no one gave her the benefit of the doubt.
Because they just wouldn't believe her, they would believe him, is what you're saying.
Yeah, because their playtime lunch affairs were more important, and being popular with the nurse.
So to switch gears a little bit here, there are people out there that just think, okay, when we come to the end of our life, we die, we're stuck in the ground or cremated or whatever, that's it. There's nothing else. What would you say to them?
You don't die. I would say that our body physically comes to an end, but that's it. The rest of us does. And you're exactly who you are. I was, fully aware that I was me when I crossed over, and that was like, after the fact, it was like, damn, like I would never have no fear of death. None. And I believe, so when people want to hear from their loved ones or whatever, so, the lady that was with me that I rang, and when I passed out, she actually passed away. She got cancer and died very quickly. She's a very good friend of mine, and had young children. And fortunately, one of the youngest, who was 12, I think, her dad lived in town, so she went and lived with her dad. Chloe was a bit older, 21, and her brother as well. So, and their auntie Lynnie sorted him, and Chloe was already living independently, but then her and her boyfriend broke up, and she came and stayed with us, and she was pretty down in that, but that's okay, we got through that. when she crossed, it was really quite nice because, you know, Chloe and I were like, you know, we want to communicate with her, and how do we know that she's okay and stuff. And so when I'd said something to Chloe, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but she rang me one day and was like, oh my God, I just found a stone and it had a picture of the tree of life on it. And she was like, and this morning when I was doing the dishes, I said to Mum, I keep thinking of the tree of life and you, Mum, because Christine wore a pendant of it. And anyway, as she was just out walking there, she stumbled across it. And I was like, yeah, well, that's your mum, like I said, because I think people think that they're going to have this conversation, or they expect for them to do something that's super obvious, but it doesn't work like that. The other thing is too, on Earth we grieve, up there we don't. Like I would say to people, and it's good because Chloe and that knew what happened to me, so they knew that there's a chance that, you know, Christine was fine and stuff like that. And I said, like you know, the way to look at it is up there, they know that they're going to see you again. Like I know that now, that I know that you still live when you cross over, that it's going to be the ones on Earth that I leave behind that are hurting, while meanwhile, and up in heaven, everybody's like, oh, we'll see, you know, your silly things, sort of thing. Like, if you could install that into people would not fear death, because there's no time there. So it's not like, whereas on Earth it's like, you know, like people that have lost their children, they've got possibly years to go before they see that child again, and that it rips people up. But if I could implant the other reality of it, it's really nothing in the grand scheme of things. If you could give them that ease, would be nice, but you can't.
So did you learn anything else about what happens after we die?
No, I don't know. I feel like like that still frustrates me. They could have given me a glimpse into what was next, but they didn't. They just sent me back. And so it's like,
yeah, you mentioned a lot of
selfish.
frustration. What was all the frustration from? There's one thing. What else was it from? You just weren't ready to come back yet?
No, I just wasn't. I preferred that they gave me another hour or two to do some more, you know, learning. Like, you know, like they could just hand it to you, but no, like you've got to come and work it out for yourself. Pretty uncool.
So first they were talking about you, not to you. Then they wouldn't give you enough time. Kind of rude, it sounds like.
It's rude. And so I've made myself feel better. Like I actually said to Nana, I was like, I reckon that they were having a debate. Because at one point they were kind of loud, like in my brain, or I don't know. And I said, I reckon that two of them, well, like she's run out of time, you know, like she's lost way too much, but there's no fixing that. And I reckon one of them was like, no, she's going to remember her kids. She's going to remember her kids or something. Yeah. I don't know. That's how I justify it.
Any idea who those three were?
No, and I've looked. I have actually seen examples where other people have said they've seen a being or beings, and I've seen a woman in Australia, she has seen three beings as well. So, but I've never had an actual answer, you know, as to clearly what or whom and what their part in this is.
Right. You mentioned they were wearing robes. I'd like to see
them again. Whoever they were cool. Like, I'm angry with them.
They were
but
cool.
They were cool. Like.
rude but cool. Were they? You said they were wearing robes. White robes?
Yeah. No.
What color?
Maroon, like a maroon color. But they're definitely there, and I would say to anyone, don't fear death. Like, there's, it's awesome.
The bottom line: don't fear death.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah. Teresa, thanks a lot for spending time with us today.
No worries. Thank you.
If you've had a round-trip death experience and would like to share it with us, we would love to hear from you. Send an email to me, eric@roundtripdeath.com. And lastly, if you've found this program uplifting, if it's given you just a little more hope in the future, share it with a friend, rate us 5 stars, and be sure to visit roundtripdeath.com. Until then, I wish you everything good that you're looking for in this life and the next.